Indo-US trade deal has a most unlikely winner, Rahul Gandhi. Opposition leader has put fear in the mind of Modi dispensation. Author, K. Ravindran. The unfolding political narrative around the Indo-US trade treaty has done more than spark debate on tariffs, market access and diplomatic alignment. It has reshaped the contours of India's domestic political landscape, particularly by elevating Rahul Gandhi's stature as the principal opposition leader. The Modi government has positioned the trade agreement as a cornerstone achievement, underscoring the strategic and economic value of preferential access to the $30 trillion US market. From New Delhi's vantage point, securing enhanced entry into the American economy is not merely a win for trade officials or industry chambers, it is pitched as a transformational moment for India's global integration. Yet the political aftershocks of this policy push have been profound, and what stands out most is how an issue rooted in economic diplomacy has become a crucible for political legitimacy and leadership. In articulating the benefits of the treaty, the Modi administration is making a bold claim that India's long-term economic interests are best served by aligning more closely with the world's largest economy. The emphasis on a multi-trillion-dollar market taps into a popular narrative of aspiration and growth. By framing the treaty as a gateway to investment, technology transfer and export expansion, the government seeks to project confidence in its vision for India's economic future. Yet this narrative has not gone unchallenged. Rahul Gandhi's vocal criticism of the deal, including his evocative and politically charged description of it as tantamount to selling Bharat Mata, has transformed what could have been a technocratic policy discussion into a broader contest over national identity, sovereignty and political leadership. What is remarkable is not just the content of Gandhi's critique, but the political traction it has gained. Traditionally, the Congress leader has been portrayed by many observers as a less formidable opponent to Prime Minister Narendra Modi's political dominance. However, his stance on the trade treaty appears to have shifted that perception, both within elite political circles and among sections of the wider public. By forcefully challenging the government's framing, Gandhi tapped into fundamental anxieties about national pride and economic equity. His commentary resonated with those wary of globalization's uneven benefits and those skeptical of agreements perceived to favor elite interests or compromise strategic autonomy. In doing so, he reframed the debate from one narrowly concerned with trade deficits and tariff schedules to one tied to the larger question of who defines India's path forward. The government's reaction to Gandhi's critique has been vigorous and unrelenting. The ruling party's machinery, spanning elected representatives, party spokespersons and affiliated media, has mobilized to discredit his opposition to the treaty. This defensive posture signals not only a sharp political rebuttal but also a broader anxiety about the implications of Gandhi's rising visibility. If the government's narrative had been winning easily on its own terms, there would be less need for such a full-court press against the opposition leader. Instead, the intensity of the response suggests that Gandhi's intervention has struck a chord that Modi's party finds unsettling. Their concerted efforts to label him as irresponsible or unpatriotic reflect an awareness that Gandhi's critique has broken through the government's initial framing and forced a more contested public conversation. In the process, Gandhi's political credibility has received a significant boost. Rather than being dismissed as a peripheral or ineffectual opposition figure, he now occupies a central position in the discourse surrounding one of the government's flagship policy achievements. This shift has implications beyond the single issue of the trade treaty. It reshapes how Gandhi is perceived as a counterweight to Modi's leadership, not merely as a critic from the sidelines, but as someone capable of setting the terms of national debate and rallying public sentiment around themes of sovereignty and justice. For many observers, this episode marks a turning point in Gandhi's political trajectory, a moment where he transitioned from a background figure in the opposition to a more consequential actor in India's national politics. The impact of this development is multifaceted. On the one hand, it has amplified the opposition's voice at a moment when the government anticipated broad consensus on its foreign policy initiative. On the other hand, it has exposed the limits of the government's control over the narrative. By aggressively pushing the benefits of the Indo-US treaty, the Modi administration aimed to underscore its diplomatic acumen and economic vision. Yet the force of the backlash to Gandhi's critique reveals that a significant segment of the populace, or at least of the political class, is receptive to alternative framings. This suggests that public opinion on globalization and bilateral trade agreements is more complex and contested than the government's messaging might imply. When trade becomes intertwined with national pride and political identity, economic policy debates no longer operate in a technocratic vacuum. They become arenas for larger cultural and political struggles. For Modi and his party, the challenge now is to recalibrate their approach. The current assertive pushback against Gandhi could backfire by reinforcing his status as an underdog standing up to a powerful establishment. The danger for the government is that in attempting to diminish his critique, they inadvertently legitimize it. The repeated targeting of Rahul Gandhi on this issue may make him appear as a focal point of resistance, galvanizing supporters who see his defiance as principled rather than opportunistic. In a political environment where narratives of nationalism and self-determination carry significant weight, positioning Gandhi as the defender of India's dignity against perceived concessions to a foreign power has potentially far-reaching effects. The broader implication of this political drama is that economic diplomacy cannot be disentangled from domestic legitimacy. Trade agreements are inevitable fixtures of statecraft. Yet their domestic political reception is shaped as much by identities and narratives as by balance sheets. The Indo-US treaty debate illustrates how global economic policy becomes inseparable from questions of national character, leadership credibility and political contestation. For Rahul Gandhi, critiquing that very agreement has provided a rare window into national prominence. Ultimately, the surge in Gandhi's political credibility underscores a vital truth: in democratic politics, dissent, when articulated with conviction and resonance, can elevate leaders and redefine debates. The government's narrative has been met with a counter-narrative that casts it in a very different light. That counter-narrative has gained traction because it taps into deeper anxieties and aspirations about India's place in the world. Whether this moment becomes a lasting turning point in Indian politics will depend on how both the government and the opposition build on it. But for now, the clearest beneficiary in the political arena appears to be Rahul Gandhi, whose challenge to the treaty has amplified his voice and reshaped his role in the national conversation.